Awesome. So we'll get started. If anybody's coming in late, that's okay. Today's webinar is on what's new in third-party risk management. Thank you for joining us, and we'll get started right now. So first thing I need to do is I need to go over the safe harbor notice. We try to be as transparent as possible in working on these webinars. And so if there's any forward-looking statements about things that are to come in the product, just understand that some things, sometimes plans change, and we make our best intentions to make sure that everything that we're talking about today is delivered on time and in the way that we promised. But sometimes changes shift or timelines shift a little bit. And so we want to make sure that you're conscious of that and understand that as you're going through the information. Please join us for future webinars. We've got a lot of opportunities in the community where you can join for an interactive event series, and the link will be shared just a few minutes into the chat, and I will share that with you. But to get started, I want to introduce myself. Rosalind Morville. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here working on vendor risk management, and I need to change that to third-party risk management because today we are introducing our new third-party risk management product. Stephanie is the Senior Product Manager for that product, and she brings a wealth of background to this offering, both working as a ServiceNow SC, so helping people understand how they can use the product. For several months, she worked in that capacity. And then last year transitioned to become our product owner. So this is the first release where she's had full development oversight. And I think you're going to be delighted by some of the attributes and features that she's bringing to the product. Stephanie also has an extensive background, starting in business intelligence and analytics, but then spending nearly a decade in third-party risk management specifically. So there's going to be a lot of information that she can share with you, both from a perspective standpoint and intimacy with the product that she's delivering today. So definitely feel free to ask questions. On that, everyone's placed on mute when you start out, but feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask questions throughout the session. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we don't get to questions, please use the community forum for ongoing conversations or additional questions that may come up after the session. At the conclusion of the session, we will give you a short survey, and we really appreciate your feedback for improving our format as well as our content moving forward. So everything we're going to talk about today is available in the store now. The risk applications are all available. And in order to go over some of those, we did discuss business continuity management in an earlier session. Today, we're talking about third-party risk management. We're also going to talk about the risk management enhancements on the 17th. We'll talk about compliance case management specifically on the 22nd. And our sessions for risk for this release will conclude with policy and audit management and core features and functions that were brought to this release on August 24th. So stay tuned for that. And I will drop the link later in the chat to register for any community sessions coming up. But I wanted to give you an understanding of why we're introducing ServiceNow Third-Party Risk Management now. So we heard from our customers that there's a variety of expansion across industries, roles, and increased scope across the organization for managing your third-party risk. We are building on the existing capabilities of the VRM product to better meet these customer needs. So I want to assure you that nothing that was in the vendor risk management product is being taken away. We're building upon this and enhancing and adding features, content, pre-configured workflows, and things that are going to help you grow and mature your third-party risk program. And we do introduce a new licensing and pricing model that we think is becoming more competitive and will be based on a value-based reward system for only charging you for how you use the product, not based on vendors alone. So if you need more information about that, please talk to your rep, because your rep's going to be the best person to talk about licensing and pricing. We're really here to talk to you today about the features that are in the product. So what is new? With third-party risk management, we are giving you a single source for all your third parties to cover not only your critical or high risk parties, but all the third parties that you may have access to or impact your organization systems, data, your reputation, or your assets. We have a comprehensive system that's end-to-end with some new risk due diligence workflows that are coming out of the box. We've got a pre-configured due diligence workflow, as well as renewals, additional due diligence, offboarding, and Stephanie's going to show you all that in just a minute. We also have some opportunity for cross-departmental collaboration on risk acceptance, and we're providing that holistic view across multiple risk domains. We're also improving visualizations of your third parties with a concentration risk map that will help you visualize where your third parties are within the world. And Stephanie is going to get into that in a lot more detail. And we're including some out-of-the-box sample questionnaires across those multiple risk domains, across industries, across regions, that will give you a starting point or templates, if you will, to create those questionnaires that you need to send out to your customers based on where your third parties, based on where they are or what type of service they're bringing you or what industry that you're in. So that's going to be a really interesting enhancement that I want Stephanie to talk about as well. So Stephanie, instead of just looking at slides, can we get into a demo and show everyone some of the things that you brought in the Vancouver release that are available now in the store?
Hello. Yes, absolutely. I would love to show you what we've brought into the store. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen okay? Thank you for the wonderful introduction. My name is Stephanie, and I will be going through a demonstration of our new product. So the way our product works today is that we now are going to be using the Employee Center to be able to go ahead and start your different due diligence questionnaire or requests. So we have 5 out-of-the-box workflows. The first one is for onboarding a new engagement. The second one is for reassessing a current engagement. And the other ones are for offboarding. And I'll show you those in a second. So the way it would work is that an employee will go to the Employee Center and they're going to be able to come out here and say, oh, I have a new project that's going to happen. And we need to request due diligence on a third party. So we want to go ahead and perform we want to onboard a new engagement. So this is a brand new project. Then you can check that and we'll ask you some questions. Reassessing an existing engagement. This means that maybe you're currently working with a company and you saw on the news that the CEO is in trouble for something. So you may want to do some reassessment of an existing third-party engagement to see how that's impacting you. You also could do a reassessment for a reason such as the contract is going to come due in the next 30 days or 90 days. And before you agree to renew the contract, you want to do some due diligence. Now, the other options are offboarding an engagement with due diligence or offboarding an engagement with no due diligence. Now, these are very different scopes. You may want to offboard a third party for various reasons. The example I'll use is performance. Maybe you're having performance issues with a third party. They're not delivering supplies when they're supposed to, and it's impacting your supply chain. So you would like to consider offboarding them. But before you do that, since you've been working with them for a long time, you may want to do some due diligence. What you might find during the due diligence is the reason that they're late is because some of the materials they're sourcing are coming out of a conflict area. You may decide at the end that it's actually riskier to change suppliers than to stay with the same third party that is having performance issues, because even if you change suppliers, they will also be sourcing the materials from a conflict area and they also will be late. So in that case, You thought you were going to go into this and offboard, but by the end of it, you realize that you're going to continue to do business with this third party. Now, offboarding and engagement with no due diligence, the purpose of this is that maybe, as an example, it's a consulting engagement and the project will be done at the end of the year or in a couple of months. And it does not matter how good or bad they did. There's no more work that needs to get done. So you're going to offboard them and there's no need to do additional due diligence. And this will mark the engagement as inactive. So you don't continue to do due diligence activity on them over the next coming years because you're no longer using their services. What I will do is I will start to show you an example of onboarding a new engagement and the kinds of questions that will be asked. So essentially, you'll say, I want to onboard a new engagement. It will say, what third party? And you can go and look for an existing third party. So let's say that this is Big Tech or Big Bear. There's no Big Bear or there's only a Big Networks. So that in that case, you know it doesn't exist. So you're going to say the third party doesn't exist. And then you can go ahead and you will need to provide Big Cat information right here. And you'll give the name of the third party and the engagement information. So if you found the third party in there, so let's say it's Work Faster. In this case, it will automatically fill in the key information about this third party, and you won't need to. So that means that that third party, you're already doing business with them, you have an existing engagement, but you want to add a new engagement. Now, this engagement might be for consulting services. The way we define an engagement in third-party risk management at ServiceNow is an engagement is either the product or the service that you're doing with this third party, or it could be the reason for the interaction. So you may be interacting with this company they could be your customer, they could be your client, they could be a partner. There could be a lot of different reasons to interact with a company that isn't necessarily just a product or a service. So the name of the engagement is going to tell us what that interaction is. You're going to specify the types. Now, you can have full control over defining your types. These are just some examples out of the box. If you have consulting in there with the exact same name, it will say the engagement already exists. So it will automatically put in today's date so that you can have a unique name for your engagement. Okay, so it will adjust. You're not allowed to have two engagements with the exact same name. So this is the example of that. Here, you would give the requested start date. The purpose of the requested start date is for you to go ahead and create a request. Go ahead and create a new name of it so it stops being concerned. You can put in a request for a start date and a request for an end date. The purpose of this is that you may want to, you have to start this consulting engagement on October 1st or you won't get the work done. And it might only be a three-month engagement. Now, the amount of risk that opens your company up to may be less than if it was a 10-year request. Now here, the IRQ, this is going to be the purpose or the person that is familiar with the engagement that you're requesting, and they're going to need to answer some basic questions about this engagement so that will scope our due diligence that will get sent out. So in this case, maybe I want to say that it's Able Tutor, and he's going to be the one that's going to complete this. You can see that we have a third-party address. That's their corporate headquarters, most likely, that's already filled in. There will be an address that you can provide for the engagement. Just because the corporate address is in California does not mean that this engagement might be happening in China or India or in Oklahoma. So whatever that engagement address is, you'll want to put in here. We'll talk about a map. This is what will get mapped out there on the map, is we're going to map out the engagement addresses. We can see who the primary contacts are. And then we can go ahead and make them the same as the engagement. So you could either provide a new contact, or you could use the existing engagement or the third-party contact, and you can maintain multiple different contacts. You also can send out questionnaires at the engagement level, or you can send them at the third-party level. So after that gets sent out, someone will approve the third-party request to do due diligence on that particular third party for that engagement. And someone like Able Tutor will receive in the Employee Center, they'll receive an email, but they're also going to receive a request to complete a survey. This is that IRQ that we talked about, that you chose the person who's going to receive it. And it will be just a set of general questions. Out of the box, I've provided about 7 different IRQs as examples. They can be based on any sets of questions. And the purpose of this is to scope out the next set, what's going to get sent out to the third party. So in this case, if I say, is the total spend of the third party greater than 50,000? I'm going to send out a financial due diligence questionnaire. Does the third party interact with government officials on our behalf? If I say yes, then we'll send out an anti-bribery and corruption or a FCPA, depending on if this is in the US or Europe. And you can send out different questionnaires based on the different regions. Does a third party have access to organizational data? If yes, then you can ask a bunch of conditional questions. Is it sensitive data? Is it healthcare data? Is it European data? If it's healthcare data, then we'll send out a questionnaire for HIPAA. If it's European data, then it might be a GDPR. So this is just giving you some examples of different questions that you can ask that are more tailored to that particular section, which in this case is data. And then you can make sure that you're sending out the right questionnaires to the right people. Does this third party manufacture products on your behalf? Once again, you can set up a set of conditional questions, and then you may want to consider sending out a OSHA questionnaire or a supply chain questionnaire or an ESG questionnaire. It could be highly dependent on those products and services that they're offering for you. Once they complete all of these different questions, then they can submit it. When this gets submitted and approved, that's what's going to determine what gets sent out to the third party portal, where you'll have the person that you're working with complete these different questionnaires on, such as anti-bribery and corruption, information security, export laws and regulations, whatever that is, that based on this is going to help determine the type of information that needs to be collected. These questions are all configurable and you get to determine them. These are an example. So this is what we would do from the employee portal, is that we would go ahead and be responsible for answering IRQs. You can do requests for third-party due diligence. You can also track the requests that have been sent out. So we can see that this guy, Able Tutor, also sent out 2 months ago a request to do a engagement for software for data. He can go in here and he can see what state's in there, and he can ask questions back and forth with the person that's processing this. He can ask, they can do some communications. He can say, how close is this to being, approved, things of that nature. But he'll be able to see what is happening and where it is. All right, I'm going to close this out. And then the next thing is, so that's the person that is requesting the due diligence, and that's the person that's also potentially giving you the key information to make a determination of the type of due diligence that will get sent out. I'll get to the risk concentration map in 1 second. So here, I have a new page. We have a new page called the due diligence management. When we're looking at this due diligence management page, we can see all of the active processes that are currently happening. So these are all of the different workflows, right? So these could be, I'm going to scroll down here, and we're going to see that it is based on the third party. can say I like Work Faster a lot, but we've also got some engagement requests for 3Com and Acer and Adobe. We have different request types. As you can see here, some of these were onboarding new engagements. Some of these we are requesting to do additional due diligence, renewal of an engagement contract, offboarding. All of these are the different types of workflows that could be executed. Then you'll also be able to see what state they're in. Like this is a brand new request. This is in the IRQ process, which means that somebody has an IRQ in their employee center that they need to respond to. And once they respond to it, then due diligence will get sent out to the third-party portal for them to complete. Up here, what we're seeing is the different stages in the workflow. So this is just showing us all the different processes. The first stage is that you're going to be in this new state, which is when somebody just requests a new third party to do due diligence. After that, it goes into the IRQ state. We can see all of the different here third parties that have been sent out or are being requested to send out different IRQs. In the due diligence section, we're going to see all of the different third parties that have received in their third-party portal different questionnaires to respond to. So, for example, if I want to open one of these up, I'll open up Work Faster. This is what your approvers are going to be able to see, and this is also what whoever is going to go through the contract risk process, which I'll get to in a second, will be able to see. They're going to be able to see all in one place the third-party due diligence request. So that was what was completed on the Employee Center, all of the information that was provided there. Out of the box, we don't necessarily provide all of this on the Employee Center. You can always add more questions on the Employee Center and add fields here. Basic third-party information. So that was the address field, website, things of that nature. The type. We can collapse these as well. Then we have the engagement basic information. So this is, what is the name of that engagement, what type of engagement it is, and what the address is. And then we can see all of the different risk ratings, okay? So in this case, our inherent risk assessment came out as moderate. This particular record has already, or this request has already had an inherent risk questionnaire go out to the Employee Center. And as you saw, they could answer those basic questions. If I want to see what the answers are to those questions that made a determination of that particular score, as a third-party manager, as an approver, as a contract risk processor, they can all come in here and they can actually go in here. They can see the actual questionnaire that was sent out, how the scores are determined. So we have the different scales for these scores. And they can see if they wanted to see the details in there. But if you wanted to open up that actual questionnaire, this is the questionnaire that was sent out. And this is the questionnaire. And these are the answers to the different questions. So you just saw me go through something similar to that, right? And there you go. You can see the answers to the questions. I'm going to jump back using my breadcrumbs. That was my inherent risk questionnaire. That inherent risk questionnaire, based on the questions, the answers to those questions, what will happen is that questionnaires will either get sent to at the third party level, to the third party contact, and then those will be scored and kept at the third party level, or the questionnaires will get sent out to the engagement contact, and the scores will be rolled up for that particular engagement. If I open this up, I'm going to be able to see the different questionnaires that are getting sent out to the engagement person. So we can see that this was submitted to the third party. They responded to some things. And right now we're doing some finalizing with the third parties. But you can see all the key information, such as what are the details, right? You can see if there is any kind of changes and who made the changes. You can see that Alex Newson, he's the person that responded to the questionnaires. He had some kind of comment and he wrote a comment in here, and you can communicate back and forth between the third party portal and here if you'd like. You can see at the same time all of the key information that we collected during that initial from the employee center. I can also come out here and I can see the different questionnaires that were sent out, and you can see what the risk ratings were. So they completed an FCPA and they completed it, and it's a very low risk. They also completed an export control questionnaire, and we can go in if we wanted to and drill down to see the different answers to that. And we can see how this was scored. If you wanted to, we can look at the scoring within here. So this gives us an idea, the ability to go in and see all of that. If there was a document request, which there wasn't in this case, then we could go ahead and see the document requests from here, okay? So these are some of the key things. If you wanted to create an issue based on the questionnaires, you can create an issue from here, or you can create a task, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna close this real quick here. All right. And if I go ahead and I close this as well, okay, we'll save that out. Okay, so now everything is closed for this particular third party. Oh, one thing I didn't show you here is the risk intelligence scores. You also will be able to see. So the risk intelligence scores, you'll be able to see for that third party. These are all of, we used to call them third-party scores, but now we call them risk intelligence scores. One, because it is a industry standard that a lot of that is being used pretty frequently to represent the scores that you would pay to import in from like a BitSight security scorecard and Taros. These are just some examples of some providers. You can bring in scores and their ratings, and we label those as the risk intelligence scores. And you can go ahead and you can see them right there, okay? So I'll save that right there. Now, if I come back out of here.
Stephanie?
Yes.
While you're going through the IRQ questionnaire commentary, there's a few questions that came in around specifically around IRQs. Do you want to address those now, or do you want to wait till the end?
I would love to. I'm so sorry. I don't see.
No, that's fine.
Aha. You are focusing on third parties. Sometimes large organizations utilize product services. You are focusing on third parties. Sometimes larger
I think there's three down.
Engagements. So the first question is, we are focusing on engagements. We're focused on the different engagements associated to the third parties. So we're not focused on the third party. If I go all the way to the bottom, how does the IRQ review and challenge work? Does it go through multiple risk domains, risk SMEs to approve their section? That's an amazing question. And the answer to that is this out of the box is set up for one person to approve a IRQ, but it can be easily configured, and I'm making sure it goes into the product documentation. It can be easily configured to do multiple different levels of approvers at the IRQ level. So maybe somebody completes an IRQ and the compliance manager needs to approve it. And maybe you need to have your information security manager approve it. You can have multiple different people approve the IRQ process, and it will be done by creating different risk levels. And you can have up to 10 different risk levels. So you can have it go through even committees if you want to, is what that means. So the answer is yes, we can do that. Now, the other question that was in here was about the IRQs. In the IRQ, I have it set up so that it is sending it out for regions, for example. So there's several different ways strategies that you can use these IRQs. You can send out, you can have one or you can have 100 different potential IRQs. And these different IRQs can have, be set up for, I might have an IRQ for the US and another one for Singapore or another one for Europe. or I might have a different IRQ for suppliers versus partners versus clients. Or you could create an IRQ specifically for information security. You could have an IRQ specifically for business continuity management. Now, this is important because then you can create an inherent risk score for these different risk areas. So I could have a inherent risk score for financial or information security, and then you can send out the questionnaires based on those individual risk domain areas. So all of that is supported. I'm not going to bring up the environment with that example at this moment, but I just want to say it is supported. Okay.
And there's a ton more questions that you don't need to get to now, but just one other question about the RQ. Is it mandatory during the third-party request process?
Yes, it is mandatory, but I'm trying to think why you wouldn't want it to be mandatory, what you could do.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a question. If you want to talk with your rep about a certain scenario or bring that to our attention offline, because I can't think of a reason you wouldn't want to, but at the same time, you could slim down the IRQ to a very minimal and run through it quickly if that's not, but there's so many benefits to it. I'd love to dig into that deeper if you want to take that offline.
Yeah, you could create ways around it, but out of the box, it is mandatory.
Great. So sorry, you can move on. I know there's a ton of questions and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And if we don't, then we can continue the conversation in the community after the webinar.
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to go through webinar chat. I lost all the questions for some reason.
The Q&A.
Q&A. Oh, right. I put into chat instead. Thank you. Okay. Difference between the IRQ and tiering process. How does DDD process different from classes BRM? Great question. So the IRQ is based on the tiering assessment questionnaire capabilities. So you will still create a tiering score with an IRQ. The difference between a questionnaire, the difference between a IRQ and a tiering assessment is there is new capabilities that are added for the tiering for the IRQ that allow you to trigger questions off not just based on the answers to the overall score, but it'll be based on the specific answers. So for example, if I open this up and I show you that this is the onboarding questionnaire that we went ahead and went through, it will show you the list of questions. And the list of questions will be things such as, is the total spend on this third party greater than 50,000? Do you remember that question? It's right here. Now there is the ability to actually say, if the answer is yes, send out the financial questionnaire. All right. To either the third party or to the engagement. So each one of these questions, based on if it's a yes or no, will trigger out to send a different questionnaire out to the third party. So you have more control over what is being sent out to your third parties. Now, this is where the flexibility comes in with the workflow. So in this example, if they answered yes to, does a third party interact with government officials on our behalf? Then it will automatically send out a anti-bribery and corruption questionnaire. Now, if you create an IRQ with a slightly different name, let's say you create one that says Europe, which I can show you the European one, you can then associate different questionnaires that get sent out. And this is essentially saying I can send out any of these different questionnaires based on a yes, no answer. So if it was Europe, you might want to go ahead and send out a foreign corruption, FCPA questionnaire versus the anti-bribery and corruption. So this could be regionally focused. This could be focused on, or it can be focused on risk domains, which was another question that somebody had. So another strategy around this is that at the IRQ level, you can you'll have a score for the IRQ. Here's a classification, and the classification in this case is the IRQ template, which is what will allow for that ability to send out questionnaires based on the answers to the questions. But you can also associate these IRQs to different risk areas. So if you created an IRQ specifically for business continuity management and another one for information security, you would associate different risk areas, and then you would have a different inherent risk score for each one of these. And then you can have different people answer these IRQs. So you can send out multiple different IRQs. Once again, there's lots of different strategies to use this, but the IRQs are actually what will drive the process. Okay. How does the onboarding work during RFP? Meaning one engagement can be provided by multiple third parties. We have some other products within ServiceNow, just so you know, where we have a new product line for procurement. And there are some other capabilities during the early stages of onboarding that would be covered more from a procurement product, including like awards for shortlisted third parties, where after you've shortlisted it, we're doing the due diligence aspects of this, or they can do the shortlisting after they do the due diligence, and we can integrate with the different products to go ahead and send all of the key information into them. Is the IRQ feature able to calculate inherent for each risk domain area? I already answered that and then aggregate it up. The answer is yes. You can do it for different risk areas. And the way you would do that is you'd create multiple IRQs, and then you would roll those up together to create one inherent risk score. Isn't it confusing engagement here and then also under audit? I don't know, Jira. Okay, that's a different question. We've always had engagements, and we had engagements in BRM. So we're just continuing the engagement concept, and we're just focusing more on the engagement level than at the third party level. And the reason we're focusing at the engagement level is because each time you interact with a third party differently, it exposes you to different risk, and you're going to need to do different types of risk assessments on a third party if you have them managing your data versus if you are just buying servers from them. So depending on what you're doing with the third party will make a determination of the type of due diligence that you will need to do and the level of due diligence that you will need to do. The third party can access questionnaires in Snow even without a user account? No. To get access to the third party portal, you would need to go ahead and they will be added as a user to the third party portal, and they'll need to log in there. So they will need a user ID to use the third party portal. And when you collect who your third-party contact is and who your third-party engagement is, or engagement contact is, that's how those IDs will automatically be created for them. It will be based on their email. Okay, so are there any features being handled to handle ongoing monitoring and termination? So termination is going to be focused on, if you want to go through those workflows to terminate those. But in addition to that, we will be in the next release coming out with ways of setting up mass questionnaire or mass enrollments for your third parties. So for example, if you had 10,000 third parties and you knew that on an annual basis, whenever a insurance document was going to come due, you needed to, once it started to expire, you would need to request 90 days before the expiration date a new insurance document. Then it will automatically watch the insurance expiration dates for all of the third parties that you put in scope, and will send out a request. If you know that you want to send out a SIG questionnaire to them on a biannual basis, if it's a supplier that's medium risk or low risk, that is in a certain country, whatever you want to do, you'll be able to set up the criteria. It will automatically recognize any third party or the engagement that fits that criteria and send out the requests based on a scheduling. So you don't have to do those on a one-on-one basis anymore. Starting in February, that will be our new feature to handle larger sets of third parties. What if a third party? Yes.
Is it possible to go through a little bit about the risk concentration map and a few of the other features?
Yes.
I know we bogged you down with the IRQ. There's so many good questions. They keep coming in, but I want to make sure that we get to a few of the other exciting features that you've put in, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
Thank you so much for spending so much time on that. I know it's an important feature, and I think that people will really be excited to start using it.
It will be. It's actually a huge improvement, and it will give you a significant amount of control. And hopefully I've hit on some of those points. So the next thing here is, before we get here, I do want to complete this, which is, so we talked about going to the due diligence process. Then it can go through the approval process. Now the approval process can have multiple levels of approvers. You can have 10 levels of approvers. That can happen. You can have concurrent and sequential approvals. That is a new feature that's coming out. And in addition to that, after it's approved, you can either say that it's approved and you're done here, or there's an optional step. And here, this optional step, you can send it to what I'm going to call a contract risk process person. And this is a differentiator of ours, is that you can have somebody in either legal or procurement log in here. They can, get to this. They'll be able to see all of the key information. They'll be able to see the questions and answers to the inherent risk question assessment. They'll be able to see the questions and answers to the completed questionnaires. They're going to be able to see all of the risk intelligence scores. They're going to see who were the approvers, and they can go ahead. I'm not logged in as the contract risk person, but if I was, they would have the ability to upload the contract, say when the contract expiration date is and when the start date is, and they can go ahead and say that contract that they had completed executing that contract, and everybody will be notified when they complete their part. This is an optional step to bring in that person, but you now have a way of giving them a self-service environment to get all that key information in one place. Now, overall, what this is that this is really cool. We have a concentration risk heat map, and I can go ahead and I can see all of my different third parties that are out here, engagements, and we can go ahead, and if I want to see those by a third party level, I can go out here and put in, maybe if I wanted to say work faster, I would be able to map out all of the different engagements that Work Faster has, which, as you can see, I have 9 of them. And I would be able to see all of those different engagements out here. And we can go in and see the information for these different engagements and bring it in. Okay. This is if I wanted to jump back into the workspace to see more details on that particular engagement, I can always kind of jump back in here and I can see all of the details on this particular engagement. We can see how it got to be high risk. It was high risk due to the security risk and the reputational risk. It was a security risk that brought it into high risk. And if you wanted to go ahead and see the different questionnaires that were completed and the assessments, you would be able to see that here at the main engagement page. Okay. We have 15 minutes left. I'm trying to think what else I have for, so the employee center is new and huge. The map is new and huge. The overall due diligence management of the workspaces, of the workflow to watch it go through. This is new. And When we go into the list view, the IRQ is new because it gives you more control of what's being sent out. And in the list views, you're going to be able to see such as like all of the due diligence that were requested, and you can open those up and you can see what's happening in each one of these different due diligence sections. So those are our new main features that are coming out. One thing that I didn't mention is that we now have the ability as a third-party manager, if you want to allow the third-party manager to respond to questionnaires on behalf of the third party. So for example, you sent them questionnaires to their portal. If the company says, I'm not going to respond, log into your portal, and they send you an email with their responses, then you can now look at that email, look at their attachments. You can attach things on their behalf. You can answer questionnaires on their behalf. Of course, you want to, put that in the comments and everything and submit it on their behalf, because we are aware that there are some companies that have a company policy where they will not log into these different portals. So that has also been addressed in this. Some other things that have been addressed in here is that you can now tie risks and controls at the engagement level, because our new focus is going to be at the engagement level, not at that third party level. And then let's see, I think that is a lot of our main new features. Is there anything else that you'd like me to cover, Roz?
If you, this question, if you could just talk about how reassessments are kicked off. Is the engagement requester, will they automatically be notified to complete the reassessment? Or how does that work? Or would they send to them individually? Can you just talk a little bit about reassessing a third party?
Yes. So the reassessment at this time, the way it would work is you can have questionnaires sent to the third parties portals automatically based on a schedule. You can send out questionnaires based on like events. You can set up business rules. Or if you wanted someone on the business side to drive the reassessment. So let's say that this is something that wasn't scheduled. It was off schedule. They have the control to come out here to do a reassessment. And they will say, I want to reassess the cloud MSP third party. And then you got to say which engagement. Well, there's data center. We hear there was a data breach, right? And then you can go ahead. And then in this case, you would use an IRQ. And the reason for this IRQ is because we don't know why we're doing an off-cycle reassessment, and that this is really focused. And you can see that it's automatically bringing in the address. It's automatically bringing in any of the key information that was already out there, okay, and filling this in. And this is really going to just send out an IRQ. You can specify the questions, and based on the answers of the IRQ, it will send out those questionnaires. So it's just another way of reassessing a third party if you want to do it off cycle. You can also, if it's based on a contract renewal, you can do it on that. You may have a different IRQ that's driving this. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think we've got a lot more questions coming in. I'm sorry, the question was also about on-cycle reassessments. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, on-cycle. So it would. So the purpose of going through the employee center is to really do it manually, and then for someone to complete an IRQ. So then that's going to be, they're requesting it. But we have the ability to schedule an automatic reassessment. So if you want to schedule it on an annual basis, then you can just use our scheduler. This is if you want to manually trigger it off, if you want to manually trigger it to kind of override the automation process. Hopefully that makes sense.
Not to put you on the spot, but do you possibly have the release notes near or handy as I go through the last slides. If you don't, that's fine. We can get back to Edward if Edward would put his email address just to the hosts. We can
I
following.
do not have those handy, but I might be able to get them if you give me 1 second.
If you can, that would be great. If you can't, I'll just go through the rest of the slides. And if Edward wants to privately message your email address just to hosts and panelists in the chat, we'd be happy to send you that link afterwards. Sorry about that.
Or we could get that and just, automatically send it to everybody if needed, if you have a way to automatically send it. All right, do you have any other, I can see we have open questions. Do you want me to hit these or do you want to do your final slides?
If you can answer any of the rest of the questions, we can take the time. The slides are superfluous to your expertise and interest, so go for it.
What if a third-party engagement changes from A to B? In such a scenario, what changes will be required? I'm not sure if I understand that question.
I didn't understand that either. Charles, if you want to send us an email with that or take it offline, we can do that. So send us your email address and I'll give you an email address to send it to.
You have the ability to reopen an IRQ. If you want to, you can reopen things. During a reassessment, can you send previously responded completed questionnaires so the vendors do not have to complete them? That we will have in the next release. That will be a new feature in the next release, but it is coming. So the answer to that is yes, soon. Well, next release, not now. All right, why don't you go? This is a lot of reading. We only have 6 minutes. Why don't you go ahead?
Not a problem. If people have additional questions, please feel free to put them in the community, because I think that that's one of the best places to do conversations about this so that everyone can benefit from the answers. Otherwise, you can email me at rosalind.morville@servicenow.com and I'll try and route it to the right person. But as I said, I think the community is a great place to answer some of those questions, and we'll take some of these and see if we can develop content around some of the more generally applicable ones. So thank you so much for the demo, Stephanie. It was great information. As we said, this is enabling you with the new third-party risk management upgrade from vendor risk management. It's really allowing people to manage those different types of, all types of third parties that Stephanie mentioned, not just vendors and suppliers, but also your partners, your counterparties, your affiliates, your franchises, whatever type of third party you might be dealing with across the entire third-party risk management lifecycle. So it's really exciting to introduce these enhancements to you guys. The concentration risk map, you can see another picture of that here. It's a great way to visualize the concentration risk globally and to understand the impact of your engagements across your third-party ecosystem. And a lot of the out-of-the-box content and workflows should really help your team increase productivity. So we're super excited to introduce this release to you. We answered a ton of questions. We are close to time, so I want to be respectful of people's hour that they gave us. But if you want to join us for future ServiceNow events, there's a link to additional webinars and content here. I did put the GRC events in the chat, and I'll follow up with folks' emails once we move forward. And thank you so much for your time. Stephanie, thank you for giving us such great insight into the product as a whole. We really appreciate the time that you have and that you can share those, kind of directly applicable changes. The features come a lot from customer requests and enhancements, so keep them coming. We really want to make sure that we're servicing you and introducing the product so that it's going to be competitive, but really so it's meeting your needs today and in the future. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for your time. Thank everybody for joining us. And as I said, if you have additional questions, commentary, we'll try to get back to some of these other additional questions in content moving forward. So thanks so much. Stephanie, have a great day. And everybody, please have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you.